Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel and another episode of Dump and Chased. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Ian Lafreniere. That was a great time there, and if you already haven't, well, go and give it a watch. But for this video right here, we will be going over the last week of hockey, all the news when it comes to the Atlantic Division and how it seems to get more competitive every day, an extension in Josh Doan, some replacements and maybe some snubs on Team USA, to a bunch of more news. This is going to be a jam-filled episode, so make sure you stick around. But before we get into that, make sure you like, subscribe, ring that bell, go and comment. I want to hear what all of you have to say for this past week of hockey, or maybe something that you want me to talk about in the future, or something that's caught your eye. Let me know about that. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into the video. And first, we're going to start off with the Bruins versus Habs, Saturday night hockey. And this was honestly a really good game. 4-3 Bruins here, regulation win. Morgan Geekie has 2 goals. Cole Caulfield's hat-trick night was spoiled by a Bruins win here. And one where, you know, for the Montreal Canadiens, I think it does get to a point where the goaltending is becoming louder. And we really did see that earlier on in the season with Samuel Montembeault. He gets sent down, comes back up, and again, this game is where you see it kind of again for the Montreal Canadiens. 4 goals on 21 shots and 8-10 for him. Now, it's not all on Montembeault. I think that for the most part, the Montreal Canadiens have had their little slide here as of late. Now, for the Boston Bruins, this was a really nice comeback win. And one guy I would like to shout out outside of Morgan Geekie, Fraser Minton. He had 2 points in this one, goal and an assist. Of course, the former Maple Leaf. I know Leafs fans are probably cringing when I talk about him right now, but 25 points on the season. I believe he's top 10 in rookie scoring. He's had a really nice year for them. I wanted to give him some credit for what they've been able to do during this stretch. Now, when you look at the other side, Jeremy Swayman, not too much better. 880, saved 22 of 25. Was good enough to get the win. But yeah, this was a really fun game. And I think it only brings more... there's a better way to say this, but brings more light to the Atlantic Division and how close and competitive it is right now. The Boston Bruins, the Montreal Canadiens are just 2 of these teams in an 8-team division that is battling. And realistically, right now, when you look at all of these teams and the guys on the roster and how they're developing them and where they should be, every team in this division could make playoffs. Like, that's not take this out here and say that it's unrealistic. So when you look at something like this, it's crazy to see that, one, you have these games like this, and we keep having them in the Atlantic Division, but again, how close it is. And, when we look at the Atlantic right now, and we'll go to the division specific one, so we're going to talk about a couple of teams here. We've already talked about the Boston Bruins a bit. We'll get into them again, but we're going to talk about the Bruins, Wings, and Sabres in this case. And yes, Tampa Bay Lightning, they deserve their flowers. They've been so good this season. 32-14-4, 68 points. And we'll just stay on the Bruins for now. 30-20-2, 62 points. They've been very good, not too far, only 7 points back of that first place spot, which really isn't too much when you think about it altogether. But yeah, look, you see the Leafs. They've been really good over the last bit. This homestand, we'll talk about them, hasn't been great. Oh yeah, we'll also talk about the Leafs. The Florida Panthers are right there, and then the Bruins. So no one really expected the Bruins to be this team, to maybe not be as competitive as they've been. And look, I'm not bashing on the Bruins. 8-2-0 in their last 10, 2-game win streak. Been really good at home. Very okay, and maybe even subpar on the road. But they've won when they needed to, right? Like you don't get to 30-20-2 in the season through 52 games and you've been bad, right? So for the Boston Bruins, I think the one thing you need to keep in mind here is the expectations were low. They're above that. And, they had those conversations with guys like Rasmus Andersson from the Calgary Flames. He ended up going to Vegas. And I'm sure they will have more as we inch closer and closer to the Olympic trade deadline and then the real trade deadline. So when it comes to something like this, for the Bruins, and we'll look at their roster right now and who's been able to produce, a guy in David Pastrnak is so important to their success. 64 points in the season, 47 games played. He has 21 goals. He's been dishing those assists over to Morgan Geekie, who has 28 goals in the season. The one aspect I think's really helped out, or I think, not thinks, has really helped out the Bruins is the guys up top are producing, yes, like they've been good. But you've also seen that through their depth. Like, we talked about a guy in Fraser Minton, 25 points, 13 goals on the season. Murat Kuzanidov, 22 points on the season. Mason Lohrei, he's looked good, right? Mark Kastelek, I think that even though at 15 points, he's been able to produce in other ways and be effective in other ways in that bottom six, right? Victor Arvidsson, maybe not the greatest season, but he's been fine. I think that altogether, he hasn't been that bad. I mean, 26 points in 40 games is not too shabby considering where he was with the Oilers and how he was looking. But, from top to bottom, and it seems like for a while, a very, very long time, the Bruins have been able to get the most out of not only their top guys, but their bottom guys. And I think that's so important. And we're seeing this, honestly, through every team in the Atlantic Division right now. But the Bruins specifically do a pretty good job at that. They sit fifth right now, 1 point back of both Buffalo and Montreal for that third spot in the Atlantic Division. So, again, things are very close. But the team above everyone else in the Atlantic Division, the Detroit Red Wings. And, I made a video, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. I didn't make the video, but it was a video here talking about if the Wings are possibly fraudulent or not. Now, 32, 16, and 5. It's pretty hard to be fraudulent there. Now, at the time, they had a negative goal differential. There was a lot of talk about maybe a lot of their guys are overperforming. They're just getting lucky in some cases. Now, when we look at who's been able to produce, I mean, the regular names of Lucas Raymond, Dylan Larkin up there, and Alex DeBrincat, who's had a really, really solid season, 27 goals. Now, he wasn't selected for Team USA, but he's been so good. Like, you talk about raising your game to a certain level, and whether that means he was trying to do that for the Olympics or not, he's been very good. Murray Sider, I think he's with him and Simon Edinson actually on that pair have been very, very solid. Andrew Kopp, I feel like, has taken a step forward. Patrick Kane has still been very, very productive, even at his old age, 30 points in 38 games. James Van Riemsdyk also has taken a very nice, I don't want to say step because it's not like he's developing, but maybe a step forward to his former game. He's so good in front of the net. 24 points in 44 games, 14 of those being goals. Emmett Finney has been a nice surprise. ASP, Axel Samdim Pelika, if you don't know, very good. And just, even Marco Kasper, who had a really, really tough start to the season, has looked a lot better over this last bit. So for the Detroit Red Wings, look, I'm not going to sit here and say that I think they're a cup contender, and maybe their record says otherwise. I mean, when you have a .651 points percentage, you are going to be sitting up there and saying, we should be in that conversation. But I think we'll leave that for teams like the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Colorado Avalanche, the Dallas Stars, teams like even the Edmonton Oilers right now, considering how well McDavid and everyone else is doing over there. But Detroit, I feel, is having a good season. Are they a cup contender? No. Could they get to the second round? Yes. Possibly the third. We'll see. But I think there's a lot of things that are going well for them right now. And we'll see how much they buy at this trade deadline, even if they do it all. I think if you're not anywhere, it's probably that defense core. Say what you want, even though that's been very good. And I think they were trying to do that with Rasmus Andersson. But yeah, Detroit is a very interesting one. I love their team. I'll always be a fan of Detroit. You guys know that I am. I've always been a fan of the Leafs. That's not really much of a surprise if you've watched my content over the last 3 years. But I've always liked Detroit. I want to see them win. I would love to see them win. But I do think they're in a spot where they are overperforming and they're doing well. I mean, when you have a goal differential of +8, very good. When you compare that to the teams like a +47, the Tampa Bay Lightning, hard because they're very good. But yeah, I think if they're going to add, maybe a different talk. But right now for the Detroit Red Wings, I think you do have to be realistic sometimes. And I think they'll do well. I want them to do well. But again, there's a lot of other teams that could really pick that up. We'll see how things go prior to and then after the Olympic break. Again, a lot of these teams are going to be like that. And then there's also the Buffalo Sabres, who sit third, and yes, third in the Atlantic Division, which is so crazy to think about, because everyone kind of had that same thought, and I did too. I said it. I'm not going to put the Buffalo Sabres high until they show me and everyone else that they can do better. And look, it didn't start off good for the Buffalo Sabres. And all of a sudden, they get rid of their GM, and now they're third in the Atlantic Division, 63 points, 29, 17, and 7, a +2 goal differential. They're fixing it. And, I mean, deadly on the road, 14, 6, and 6. But, yeah, the Buffalo Sabres have done a weirdly good job of turning around this season to where you say, what changed? And, you know, I think there's a lot of guys that you could kind of put this change on. You know, I think that Jarmo Kekalainen, when he stepped in as the GM, he pretty much told everyone, no one's safe. And I think that instills something in the players. They realize that this guy, he's new, he doesn't have relationships with anyone, he doesn't care. He's here to do a job, make the team better, and make sure they succeed. So instilling this nervousness, this unease in the team that they kind of not necessarily really only had it, but they really never had expectations, right? They never had this push, this want. You want to make playoffs, but isn't it easier to stay stagnant and stay comfortable in that way? Because you know you have your contract, right? So when a guy comes in there and says, yeah, hit the road if you're not going to work hard, I think that changes a lot for this team. And, you know, you talk about a guy in Tage Thompson, 27 goals, 53 points. Alex Tuch, we'll see if he extends with the Buffalo Sabres, but he's been such a good piece. Rasmus Dahlin, Josh Doan, who got his extension. We'll talk about that. And, yeah, I mean, altogether, this team has done a lot that I think we haven't really expected. And I think this goes to the goaltending as well. Alex Lyon, 12-6-3, a 279-11. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, you know, he had a very interesting start to this season. He was not good, right? And we were all talking about, is he really going to be taken out from that Olympic team? Like, is there a way that he just doesn't make it? And yeah, there is definitely a way that he doesn't make it if that continues. But now he's looked so much better. 11-7-2, 905, 266. Colton Ellis, I really do like his game. The Buffalo Sabres really like his game. He's kind of been put in some tough spots. But when you talk about the Buffalo Sabres and what they've been able to do, I think there's one thing that you need to keep in mind is that, again, along with those zero expectations, is that we mentioned the playoffs. You want to make it. Maybe that was a flip of the switch. Maybe there was, this has been long enough that we've been suffering. And I'll also like to shout out Jason Zucker, 27 points in 32 games, 13 goals. Matthias Samuelsson, you know, maybe there was a couple of right things done here before Kekalainen came in, but he's been really good. I think that he's really been able to play his game. I think that outside of the injuries, that's also been, you know, something tough for him. But yeah, like a lot has gone well. But we'll go back to Josh Doan here, who signs his 7-year contract extension. I mean, you gotta love what he's been able to do. $6.95 million. I think that this could work out decently for the Buffalo Sabres if he continues to do what he has done offensively and defensively. Yeah, I mean, this could be a very nice deal for the future, considering how much the cap is going up and how much you could be saving if he's going to continue producing. Like, we talk about a guy, 35 points in 51 games, that didn't have much expectations going into this year for the Buffalo Sabres post JJ Peterka trade. And I think you can have that conversation right now about who won it very early, but who won it. But he's been very, very productive. He's been very good. And I think that's something you need to keep in mind, Sabres fans, is that, yeah, you know what? Over these past years, you know, you may have lost a lot of big names. We talk about Sam Reinhart, who has shown up day in, day out for the Florida Panthers, won a cup there. Jack Eichel, who won a cup post Sabres time. He's who he is. He's very, very good. You know, a lot of other, Linus Ullmark, right? He went to Buffalo. He went to Boston, went to Ottawa. He's been very successful. And then, you know, a guy in Josh Doan. It feels like when you come back in these trades, you finally have a win, and he's been that for the Sabres. So, yeah, I want to talk about Buffalo. They've been so good. I mean, no one would have expected this until you really do see it. So shout out to the Sabres. And then I will talk about a team that was looking better and then was looking worse. And it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. We talk about how good they were on that road trip. And even when we're looking in early January, they win against the Winnipeg Jets. They get a point against the Islanders, win against the Panthers, win against the Flyers. They win against the Canucks. The Avs in overtime, they get those points. Maybe a scheduled loss against Utah didn't look great. They get a point against Vegas, probably should have had to, win against Winnipeg. And then this homestand has been just absolutely atrocious for them. They lose to Minnesota 6-3. They lose to Detroit 2-1 in overtime. Lose to Vegas 6-3 in Marner's return, which we will get to. They lose to Colorado 4-1. And then now they have a hot Sabres team who we just talked about on Tuesday. So for the Montreal Canadiens, for the Toronto Maple Leafs, we talked about consistency, and there's a lot of things that have gone wrong for this team, whether that means stars not showing up, a big injury list for them, and how much that probably has hurt them, and many other factors. I mean, you talk about firing one of your coaches, you talk about the goalie kind of carousel, where I think it's actually went pretty well. Joseph Woll and Dennis Hildeby really held it down before Stolarz came back. Really tough game for him against Vegas, but this whole season has been a very big blunder. And, you talk about this stand of these points for the Toronto Maple Leafs, how important that was in an Atlantic division that's close. And they're not doing, they can still do something. They're 57 points. You talk about the wild card right now, where we'll be at. They're not far. They're 5 points back of the Boston Bruins, 6 from the Montreal Canadiens. This is doable, especially when you have games against these teams towards April. You talk about Florida, Boston, Montreal. They're all there. You don't have, obviously if you face the Flyers, you want to win against them, and they did in the past game that they did face off against the Flyers. But it is doable for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But this consistency, this want factor, this fire, it's always been in question throughout the whole season. So for the Toronto Maple Leafs, you talk about that homestand not looking great. Before was great. It was amazing. You talk about what kind of game they were playing. Austin Matthews looked good. The depth was scoring. The goaltending was there. It bailed them out when they needed to. Everyone was playing. And along with this homestand, and if you don't like what happened with William Nylander, then maybe don't look. But this right here, I think, sums up what kind of went on. Now, I will admit, I did kind of giggle a bit because it's very random, right? You don't expect guys up in the press box to notice that they're on TV. It's okay, whatever, it's just another day. But William Nylander, he's watching, doing his thing, looks on the TV, looks back, floats the bird up. And it's you can't help but laugh at first and be that was very random. What just happened? And then after, he apologizes, realizes it was bad, and then now the NHL is looking into the incident. I don't really know what you really have to look for there. It's a pretty quick video, but looking into this incident, and Nylander might now face punishment for flipping the middle finger on a broadcast during a game. Calls it a moment of frustration, call it whatever you want. But this is another problem that I think the Toronto Maple Leafs face is, when you look at other teams who have been able to succeed, Vegas Golden Knights, Florida Panthers, Tampa Bay Lightning in their back-to-back days, you have your moments of frustration. You have your characters. Nikita Kucherov is a character. We've seen how he is at All-Star games. We've seen how he is after winning the Cup on the podium. We've seen how he is when he's frustrated, when he's good, when he's bad. But he's a professional. I don't think you'd ever see a couple of guys like this. You would never see McDavid do this. We've seen Leon Draisaitl kind of have his point with media, and that's, again, media sometimes is very bad with their questions and how much they harp on things. But I don't think you'd ever see Draisaitl do this either. But when you look at something like this, you say, isn't this just the most Leafy thing? Your stars with an example like that for young fans, for your team. You've been there long enough. You got to be playing how you should. And, you never see a couple of other guys on the Leafs do this. I don't think you'd see a guy in Chris Tanev. You see his face right now. He probably knew he was on TV. It's what it is. He's still contemplating surgery, apparently. You see Dakota Joshua there. A couple of other... I can't remember who was on the left, but, it's not a good look for the Leafs in a time where, they haven't been good over this home stretch. But you can't be doing that. Like, you just can't. Like, you just can't be doing that. So, it's unfortunate to see if you're a Leafs fan, because it is just frustrating. Like, and he calls it a moment of frustration. Call it whatever you want. NHL, if they use punishment, they'll see it how they see it. But yeah, it's a very odd time for the Toronto Maple Leafs. But we'll touch on the Mitch Marner return quick here now. It was an interesting time. I mean, he didn't have any points, I don't believe, for the Vegas Golden Knights. Let me just check it here. Yeah, no points, but looked good. I mean, he was booed hard when he had the puck, but he had a very good, welcome back to Toronto when his video came up. They welcomed him back. I think that's honestly all you could have expected from a Toronto crowd like that, is that, he was booed when he had the puck. Okay. When the tribute video came on, I mean, he was there for a long time. He was drafted. He was a lifelong Leaf up until the point where he signed in Vegas. He had got a very good ovation from the Leafs crowd, and I think that's, again, what you would expect. But he got the last laugh. I mean, Toronto didn't play good. Stolarz had a really tough game back. I think that was, there was really no good game to put him in. I think if you were going to, it was probably Buffalo on Tuesday, but even they've been good. You weren't really going to put him in against Vegas. There's no really good game here. Against Colorado. So you'd see either Vegas, Colorado, Buffalo. I would have went Buffalo. It is what it is. But then you're kind of faced with so Joseph Woll Friday, Sunday, with his injury history, it's a tough spot to be in. But yeah, again, the return for Marner, it is what it is. He didn't have any points. I think he didn't look bad. I think he set up a lot of plays that maybe you're not going to get that third assist, not the secondary, but the third assist on that play. But yeah, the Leafs looked slow. They didn't look like they wanted it. Vegas was playing for Marner. They were doing that. Toronto was not playing for Waugh, even though that game was kind of last week. Either way, it is what it is. They lost. Marner's return. He succeeds. Toronto loses. We'll move on to a rookie that has stood out so much in Beckett Sennecke. Hat trick yesterday against the Calgary Flames in their win. How good was that for Beckett Sennecke? How great this season has been for Beckett Sennecke. I mean, he is almost tied for the league lead in rookie scoring, 41 points, 18 goals, 2 points behind Ivan Demidov, and a bunch in front of Matthew Schaefer, who I think has dropped back a bit, but has still been very good. Again, you could still be a good player without point production, but I think that gets lost a lot in this NHL. Either way, Beckett Sennecke, he's been so good. You talk about how good I think we were expecting him to be at the start of the season. This has blown expectations out of the water. I was watching him every home game last year for the Ottawa Generals in my internship. He's versatile. He's good. He's so good. And he was a big reason why they went to the OHL finals to face off against the London Knights. 86 points last year in the OHL in 56 games. This year, 41 in 52. Right? So good. And whatever Pat Verbeek was seeing in Beckett Sennecke, and I think a lot of people were seeing that and how dynamic and versatile he could be. It was that and more for him, right? I think a lot of the mistakes that he was making in junior, we're still seeing that in the NHL. But again, you work out those kinks, you work out that stuff when you come up to a better league. But he's been a lot more safe. He's made his plays when he's needed to. But his skill, his raw talent, is what carries him, is what makes him so good. And what he can do is create plays. Be in those areas. Be a smart player. The hockey IQ is there. It's so good. So, yeah, it was definitely a surprise to what we were expecting. But for him to be second in rookie scoring, be right up there for the Calder, his first hat trick in the NHL yesterday against the Flames, and a good goalie against Dustin Wolf. Yeah, it's not bad at all. But one duck to another. Jackson LaCombe, he replaces Seth Jones on Team USA for the Olympics. What a what a time for him. I mean, like, it's absolutely crazy for Jackson LaCombe, who, I mean, how quickly he came onto the scene in the NHL is just crazy. And, you know, his stats are out of this world. I mean, 95%, 90 offense, 81 defense. Now, this has been a lot better. I think post Four Nations, he really saw that jump. And even though he was still being considered for that, I feel like some of us should have seen this coming, considering that he was a surprise invite, I guess, if you want to say it that way, to Team USA in the summer. And he definitely deserves this. Like, you talk about not the handedness of the stick, but the similarities that you get from a guy like Seth Jones to Jackson LaCombe. You talk about replacing one for one almost, that's exactly what it is. And Jackson LaCombe has been able to do that. He's getting number 1 minutes. He's 24 years old. Talk about how good he's been. Now, as much as I like this swap, I guess if you want to say it, for Team USA, not many people have liked that a guy in Lane Hutson was snubbed for this. Now, I don't have the most up-to-date card, but it is going to be pretty similar considering Lane Hutson's game from October to now. Lane Hutson is a very, very offensive-minded player. He's getting top pair minutes. He's 20 years old. Again, it's not the same left-handedness as Seth Jones, but Jackson LaCombe isn't either. But he's a guy who can walk a line, create a play, and be dynamic in that way. The only thing that he can't do is play the PK. He's not good defensively. He's still working on that. And that's what Jackson LaCombe has over him. Jackson LaCombe can play any situation. You want to put him on the power play? Sure. He can walk a line? Sure. Maybe not as good as Lane Hutson, but he can go on the PK, the power play. He can be good defensively and good offensively and play those big minutes just as well, maybe even better. And look, if you can have that, if you want to have that conversation about who is a better player, I could get on that with a guy in Lane Hutson. But when you talk about a guy in Jackson LaCombe, that's just not going to happen, right? It's just not going to happen when you talk about what you're going to get from Jackson LaCombe in terms of Seth Jones to him and Lane Hutson to the other. Now, again, this is the conversation I think a lot of Habs fans are maybe having. It doesn't make sense to put him there. It really doesn't, right? When we talk about Team USA, who's going to be on that roster, it doesn't make sense. Like Brock Faber, Charlie McAvoy, and you get into Quinn Hughes, Jake Sanderson, honestly, Zach Werenski. All of these guys can do what Lane Hutson's doing, but also play defense. Lane Hutson is still learning, right? He brings a offensive-minded, well-skating manner to a team. It works very well. He's going to be extremely good. We are already seeing that now. But he's not going to get minutes over Quinn Hughes. He's not going to get minutes over Zach Werenski. He's not going to get minutes over a lot of these guys. It doesn't make sense to have him there. He's not going to be on first power play. He's not going to be on second power play. That's why it's like these teams of Canada, US, they're so competitive. So competitive. And you can't just say, oh, well, he should be on the team because he has so many points. That's not how it works. It's just what it is. Sometimes it works like that for awards. We see that a lot of the time with the Norris. But it's not how it works for this team. You want to be dynamic, you want to be good, you're on the team. We've seen that with Bill Guerin. Not going to get that if you're just putting up points. You got to be more than that. And that's why the Olympic team is so hard to make. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why, we saw a guy in Jackson LaCombe get over there instead of Lane Hutson, because he can do everything. He doesn't just do one or two things great. He does everything great, or at least good. So, yeah, that's the last thing I want to get into there before our last topic. Yes, sorry. But there's been a lot of conversations about the New York Rangers. And, Elliot Friedman kind of threw this one out there, and they were talking about it in what would be a ideal situation for the New York Rangers. If they were going to trade away a center, how would they get one back? And they had this conversation about a guy in Alexis Lafreniere for Shane Wright. Now, this season, Lafreniere has been better, but, when we talk about better, it's marginally better. Maybe a little bit more hits, a little bit more points, almost the same amount of games. It's what it is. But these are two guys who it just doesn't really feel like we've seen that boost up from what we know they can be. Both very high picks, of course. Lafreniere, a first overall pick. Shane Wright, he was fourth. But these guys, pretty similar. And we talk about their years overall, like points. Lafreniere has just the one up at 0.51 to 0.47 for Shane Wright. We talk about the goals, the assists, and what could be an interesting one, and why I don't actually mind this trade too much for the Seattle Kraken and the New York Rangers in this way, is that, look, I don't want to be giving up a young player. The Seattle Kraken say they want to get a top 6 guy, so maybe you do send over like a Vincent Trocheck or something like that, or Mika Zibanejad if you can make that, whatever, or maybe an Artemi Panarin if he wants to go to Seattle. I think that you can kind of have this conversation. But the thing is, if you're going to bring a Shane Wright in, if it's a 1-for-1 like this, or if it's something similar, you have to move out of center. Shane Wright is only going to be able to develop as well as the time that you give him. He has not gotten that consistently in Seattle. The reason why I don't think he's been able to take that step. So, like, even when we look at his time on ice, I mean, has it really been 13:38 on average? Is that really what he should be getting? I don't think so. I don't think he hasn't been used right in Seattle, and that's why Seattle hasn't been good, right? They're bringing in all of these middle top 6 guys to play every position, and maybe that will work. No, it's not going to work that way. And I feel bad for Shane Wright because he actually has so much talent. So if you're the New York Rangers and you're bringing him in, he has to have a second line role. Has to be getting 16, 17 plus minutes at least a game. I'd even push for more, honestly, because he has so much talent. It's being wasted in Seattle. I think Seattle's seeing that and saying it's not working out. Maybe you should have played him better. It's what it is. For Lafreniere, I don't think he's been that bad. I think we've seen what he can do. I mean, 221 points in 432 games, 102 goals. He can be a good player. We've seen him be able to produce. But maybe it's just the time's up in New York. Maybe he does need that fresh change of scenery. Is it in Seattle? I think for his career, I wouldn't like that. But the thing is, he doesn't have that choice. You can't exactly choose to where you want to go if you don't have that in your contract, compared to a Mika Zibanejad or a JT Miller if they're going to be trading him, or whatever New York's going to do. Or an Artemi Panarin. He also has a no movement clause. A lot of no movement clauses going on in New York. But this is a very interesting comparison. I think there's a lot that you could look at there. I think there's so much like positivity, but also, maybe upside, I think, for both sides in this case. But maybe it's something like this. Maybe it's not. I mean, again, this is all new. The New York Rangers said that pretty much everyone's on the table. This is recent with the Seattle Kraken saying that maybe they're exploring the trade market for a guy in Shane Wright, and maybe they might move on. We'll see how this one develops. Again, when you look at stuff like this, everything can change. So, again, something to keep in mind. But, yeah, that's the last thing I want to talk about. So that does it for Dump and Chase the podcast. If you have not already, make sure you go like, subscribe, ring that bell, and comment. Let me know what you thought about this podcast, if I missed anything, what you wanted me to talk about more, and if there's anything else that I should be mentioning. But, of course, till next time, my name is Zach Staden, and we'll be talking soon.